Veterans Council and Veterans podcast. Our podcast is called Veteran Suicide, the Local Solution. At Veterans Council and Veterans, we believe that even though veteran suicide is a national problem, it has a local solution. And that local solution is the community. One of the things I noticed that when I was looking at a report is that women veterans have twice the rate of dying by suicide than non-women veterans. And when I read even further that it was mainly due to military sexual trauma, which is one of the reasons why we're having this as part of our podcast. Part of my tribe that I'm bringing here with me is I want to have Jean Gautreau. She's a licensed clinical social worker, and she's also Air Force. And Lynn Geyser, Army veteran and a peer advocate as well. So how you doing, ladies?
Hi. Good. Welcome back, Lynn.
So after just hearing what I just said, what are your thoughts about that, knowing that military sexual trauma is one of the key reasons why women veterans die by suicide? What are your thoughts? Sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
Oh, okay. I wasn't too sure if it was Jean's time or mine. Well, when MST is a very big controversy right now, and it's opened a lot the doors when big actors come out and say, hey, I have MST and things like that. But what I see, and I work with a lot of women veterans, and I would say 75% of the women veterans I do work with have MST or some form of MST, military sexual trauma or trauma, other types of trauma. But MST, what I've seen in active and out of active, there are different types. Women veterans don't just have one problem. We see many different problems. The first ones I think most common are I can't deal with it, especially in active duty. We see a lot of I can't deal with it, behaviors start and they get kicked out, or a dishonorable discharge, or something in that frame of mind. Then when you get out of the military, then you see a lot of MST that are just living day by day. They either can't keep jobs, they're dealing with addiction, some type of addiction, bad relationships, abusive relationship, or anything, can't keep a job, which again, that spirals down from financial issues, childcare issues. And like I said earlier, it's not just one thing, and you gotta take the women as a whole person and step-by-step process, because here, give me $500, that's not gonna do as a long-term effect. So that's what we're trying to do, at least in the state of Florida. There's other states that are doing things too, but in the state of Florida, we're trying to work together and work with our women veterans to look at them as a whole person and work with other organizations to come together. MST is a long-term effect. It doesn't just happen overnight and disappear overnight.
And Jean, what exactly, as a licensed counselor, what exactly is MST and all the disorders with that?
Well, for starters, the VA determines or describes sexual trauma. Military sexual trauma is a term that was coined by the VA. The VA was the one who was originally using this. They're also known as MST. It's sexual assault or repeated sexual harassment that occurred while the veteran was still in the military, still active duty. So it's important when we talk about MST, we're not just talking about rape. We're also talking about any form of sexual harassment. It's not limited to rape. Sexual harassment, sexual assault is an unwanted sexual advantage that threats and unwanted sexual touching. So, and it's not, and nowhere are we saying it's by gender. Men and women alike can be sexually assaulted, and they can be sexually harassed while in the military. And like Lynn said, it's unfortunate that it's one of the leading, one of the big numbers towards #22 suicide, which just breaks all of our hearts to even consider that that's something we have to address so much. Sorry, I lost my. So, and I want to let people know that military sexual trauma is not a diagnosis. It's a term. It's a term we've coined, kind of like #22 has become a term that we've coined, but it is not a diagnosis. It is something that has happened to you that now has, as Lynn pointed out, long-term ramifications and long-term effects that you should seek professional mental health for, to help you through how it affects you. So again, it is not a diagnosis. It doesn't define you. You know, you're not, you know, some diagnoses, but it's not.
I
When
think
they
it's
say, I'm sorry,
I think
G.
it's an
When we
important
were
point.
talking about, when we were sorry about that, we were talking about the MST situation where it's not a diagnosis and stuff, and we see that a lot, especially when MST come out and say, oh, this is, and they wait 10, 15 years to do a claim, and they don't understand the difference between MST and PTSD and how to file and things like that. And I think that's where a lot of it comes into play, the MST, the diagnosis, how do we do, when I hear and think about it, it's the behaviors and the markers that make the difference. And when I mean by markers of behaviors in the military, the sexual issues, the addiction issues, all that counts towards the diagnosis. And if I'm correct, Jean?
Yeah, very good point. I'm a DAV service officer, so you're right. I do sometimes hear that where the VA actually has a form that you fill out for PTSD, but it's not by itself a diagnosis. The DSM manual, oh, I don't have it at this desk, sorry. The DSM manual that we use for diagnostic criteria does list PTSD as a diagnosis. What caused your PTSD could be military sexual trauma. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you'll find the DSM right behind that palm tree on your left-hand corner. Where you're drinking a pina colada.
It's not hurricane season yet.
Right. So what I want to think is, and one thing you mentioned, I think is very, very important, is as far as even though the predominantly survivors are women, there's also males that survive that are survivors too, and we just happen to have one of the males here, so we won't be able to miss that. You know, a lot of times people say, "What about the male? What about the male?" So we got that covered now as well.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to do now is I want to introduce our panel. Come in, and as they come in, what we got now is we got Lakeisha Houston. Lakeisha is an Air Force active duty in Texas. We have Jamaica Jackson. Jamaica Jackson is actually, she's got a lot of experience. She's up in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. She's an Army veteran, and again, a whole bunch of hosts of experience. So we can learn a lot from Jamaica through this. And then we also have Kevin Cagle. And Kevin Cagle is of course, is an Army veteran, and he's also a survivor. So welcome, guys. How are we doing?
We're doing fine, Elsa.
Great.
So let's start with Damika. Damika, tell us, give us a sense of your journey that you went through as far as MST.
Oh, wow. Well, actually, it ended up happening when I was deployed in Kuwait, and I was attached to an all-male unit, myself and one other female, my soldier. And it was interesting because the second day that I was there, a senior enlisted tried to hit on me. The second day. And I learned later that he was one of those type that never received no for an answer, but I was that one that gave him a no. And so he continued to try to make gestures, and we were there for 6 months initially. And through the 6 months, he pretty much made my life a living hell. He would come he would make me work late hours. So I would be up at 5 and then till like 11 and 12 the next morning. Come to the shower at night, because, you know, in Kuwait, we had the showers that were sitting outside, the box showers. He would literally come to the shower, making noises, making comments, saying things. It got so bad that he wouldn't even allow me to go eat. And I lost maybe about 25 pounds. Hair fell out from stress, lack of sleep. I was in a bay with over 40 other females who all knew what was going on. And they said it's because I wouldn't sleep with him. And when I tried to press the issue to the EEO rep that was a part of their unit, he was his best friend. So when they called me into the room and I asked to have a female come in there with me, they denied it. And I was in there by myself with a room full of men, 13 men. And it was interesting because I'm sitting around at the table and I just said, you know what? I don't even need to tell my story, because you're his best friend. You're the EEO, his best friend. You're doing the same things he's doing, because I know about each one of you. So I literally got up and walked out. And I didn't get any attention until I had to literally keep sending emails, sending correspondence back to the States. And it was months. I think it was in month 5 that finally I had to do something drastic that actually could have got me put out the military. And I don't recommend anyone do this, but it was so stressful that I flipped. Lack of sleep, sleep deprivation, lost weight, hungry, malnutrition. I literally have pictures. Even when I went home, my family couldn't believe it was me. So what I did one day, I had been up for more than 2 days. I actually locked and loaded my gun.
Yeah, it causes too much. It causes a lot of stress.
Yeah. And I went after him. I locked both of us in a room.
Yeah, and you have no one. You have no one to tell.
None. There was no one there. It was just myself and her, and I felt no one was listening. And so it literally, and it said it was nothing but God, because that same day I did not even know that my unit had touched ground and was in Doha. And they were actually on their way into the cabal as I had put him in there. And after, he thought that I was going to be put out the military, but because I sent so many correspondence, I had my witness as my soldier, I had emails after emails. Lo and behold, what ended up happening is I didn't get put out the military. They removed me immediately, and the whole chain of command was fired.
Wow. Is that how you also got the role of the SAR?
That drove me to becoming a victim advocate. That was my big push, because my determination was to not let this happen to anyone else. And so I started volunteering as a victim advocate, actually for civilians. And then I started with the military, and I ended up becoming the SARC, which is the Sexual Assault Response Coordinator. And when I was a force to be reckoned with, for sure. And I still am.
I know, you're a feisty one.
Because no one should have to go through what I went through, or even stories like that. It makes no sense.
Do you hear, Mika, do you hear a lot of very similar stories like yours?
Oh yes, even worse, especially overseas, especially when you're on deployments. Being the SARC, I received all cases, CONUS and OCONUS. So, because at the time when I was a SARC, there was only one. So I was over 2 military installations and also civilians that work there. And when I say some of the things that I've seen and heard, you would think that I was making these things up. You would think that they were fiction. That's going on in our armed services. And these stories don't get told depending on what the rank is. I was one that it didn't matter what your rank was. I fought against you, because right is right and wrong is wrong. So I didn't care if you were a PV2 all the way to a colonel. If you're wrong and you sexually assaulted someone or sexually harassed someone, oh, I'm going to fight to the end. And that's what I did. And I continue to do it.
When you were active duty, even when you're fighting the SAR and you were sexually assaulted, was there a time where, man, I forgot what I was going to say. See, that's what goes along with the episode of MST too.
I was just going to say, listen, this is a hard topic for all of us, because unfortunately we've all been there. So I think it's good that people see that this is real for all of us. Like years later, this is how it is. And let me just say, Lynn, right there, that's trauma. Trauma, your brain is doing what it's designed to do. And it's trying to go, wait, this hurts. We need to get away from this. So.
Correct. And I've never actually heard Damika's story, and I'm going, wait, she's telling my story.
Yeah.
You know, so we are very similar with the background. I wasn't in Iraq or anything, but I was very similar. They didn't listen, whatever the case may be. And so it was kind of like, who do you step forward? Who do you tell? And how do you get through this? And I see that a lot, at least in an active duty, going out, and you're still stuck for years after. But I would love to hear if I would say your name wrong, so you have to bear with me. Lakita?
Lakidra.
Lakidra, thank you, Lakidra.
Yeah. Yes.
I would love
Yes.
to hear your story and to see how similar or what you've done to kind of work through your process.
So, I kind of understand where everybody's coming from. I dealt with the same thing, sexually assaulted a year in the military. It wasn't even a year when I first came in, and it happened. So it was by a leader, and it was the first person that, that I met was like, hey, how you doing? Going to his office, hey, can you try on uniform? And ended up touching my breast. And then it went further than that. And as soon as I walked out the door, it was a girl that was there picking up rocks outside. And she's like, don't say anything because you will end your career. And I'm like, I didn't know what to say. And I was in shock. And then females who were anything, you're a young airman, E1, just be careful. So for a long time, I kind of kept it myself. And like Damika said, nobody would listen. It was like okay for him to do that because he's done that to so many women. So it was just like normal. So I struggled with that for many years. I didn't say anything. I started drinking, partying. Certainly when I went overseas to Korea and Germany, just forgot who I was, just became this person that was just walking around, just heartless, and then I became a single mother because of that, and just things just went crazy. And then I remember finally, I told my story like 2017, I went and talked to a counselor, and it was just like, why, are you going to hurt yourself? Why are you here? Like, and I mentioned that I tried to commit suicide in 2009, and it was kind of like, okay, do you want to do it now? Well, if you don't want to do it now, I got to go home. I got to feed my family. So your active duty, you don't want to say anything because you're in the fear of getting kicked out. And then also you go to like Military One Source and all these other people, and it's like you're impeding on their life. So you're just like alone. So it's just it's a lot that goes on with this. And active duty, we don't have anybody. We don't know who to turn to, so, and you're just in the fear of, you may get kicked out. So I don't know.
It sounds like a very similar story than both me, Damika, and many women and men seeing the transformation was where do you go? And when I hear you get somebody got a tattoo saying I got your six, that puts, it kind of irks me a little because when I went through it, nobody had my six. So I don't know if it's many others, but it's a very, very long process. And it's, telling my story was the first time of starting to recover. So I think that's a big key. What I see many women and males do is to start, when they're able to tell their story and reach out, is the first time they actually, it's starting to recover.
And that's another thing, like telling your story is one way, and also you have to forgive them. Like it took me a while to forgive that person. Like I hated him, I hated myself, I blame myself. So it's like a whole thing of like forgiving them, understanding, hey, you know what? I messed up behind this, but for me to move forward, I have to forgive you, whether I want to or not. And I have to forgive myself for thinking that I was the cause of it. So that's a lot. We have to forgive ourselves. So I think that's what was my healing process, that. And it's a sad thing to say, but, I'm a religious person, grew up in, church as a child. But when I went to a minister, it was like, oh, just pray away. You'll be fine. Mm-hmm. And it's like, dude, I need help. Like, I need something else besides you saying, go pray and you'll get over it. That's not what's going to fix it.
Right.
So it was just trying to figure out the balance for myself and, what I should do. So I've done like you said, I've reached out to people who have, who are victims and survivors. And that has helped me a lot. Music, things like that. So whatever you have, my takeaway from this, whatever you're going through, understand it's not your fault. And then find something and be consistent in it. Like, do not stop. Just because you feel better, those triggers may happen, So it's a lot. And even a few days ago, I was in the bed for 2 days because I had flashbacks. So it's just like, you got to be consistent in healing. So. Did
you, any of you guys, and I know we have to go to our next one, and I'll let Tony introduce him, but she was describing some of the motions that going through. Jean, can you help me with this one? Is it the 5 grieving areas that you see a lot of, not just female and males that go through the process of sometimes a repeat of the 5 grieving process? What are the 5 grieving?
Yeah, grief and trauma are like the best friends that love to hate each other. It is a grief process, yes. And the stages of grief is a great Pinterest. I love Pinterest. You know, just type in grieving process or trauma process, trauma and grief, right in Pinterest. They got some really good illustrations, yes. And you will go through the angers and the remorse, and then you go through the what could I have done differently, which is why we compare it to the grief process, yes. And I love what you said about, you know, pray it away. Now listen, prayer can be a wonderful coping skill. And when we do in therapy, one of the things that we do is we help you design what we call the coping toolbox, because every screwdriver doesn't work on every screw, right? You need to have a whole toolbox, and prayer for you might be a major part of your toolbox, but you need more than that.
So that's very interesting. And hopefully we'll bring everybody will also come back and bring in some more stories here. Last but not least, we have Kevin Cagle. Kevin, you won't see Kevin now. He's on audio, but Kevin's also a male sexual assault survivor, and he spent his time in the Army. Kevin, can you tell us some of your journey?
Yeah, it kind of goes back, you know, to the very beginning in high school, and the years that all I wanted to do was to be a professional soldier. And I'm talking about the early 80s. So there were a lot of Vietnam vets, and you know, we really looked up to those kind of people. So I ended up enlisted in the infantry unit in 82nd Airborne, 2nd of 508. After training, I left like right after high school, a day and a half. And I went through the training, the basic training, the infantry school, jump school, and literally like 2 weeks after getting back, I get into my unit assignment. We deployed to Grenada, and so technically I'm a combat veteran. Some people would argue with that. But not too long, I had made an acquaintance. This guy, senior NCO, he was the 2nd platoon sergeant, and he was a 3-time Vietnam vet, and he had kind of befriended a group of us in the mortar platoon. I was in the mortar platoon, and you know, he got in some trouble with his wife, and I had moved off base because the drug uses were so bad in the dorm. I just wanted to get away from it, and he got in a situation with his wife and asked if he could come and spend the weekend with me. And I woke up one morning and he was in bed with me. I didn't think a lot about it at first, and then he grabbed me, and I really don't want to go into great detail.
No, okay.
But the hardest part for me, and I'm so terrible with names, was what she just said is about the abandonment. Because what happened to me, he beat me to the base, and when I walked into the hallway, I can see it plain as day. He's looking at me, smoking a cigarette, yes, indoors, and with a big smirk on his face. And like from that day forward, my life just turned into living hell. The people that used to be my friends broke into my room, because I had to have a room home base as well. Stole all of my equipment like 2 days before an inspection. So I had to figure out a way to take my old used build gear and make it inspection ready. Of course, it didn't work. I got put on every crap detail you could think of. And he had bragged about being, you know, serving in Vietnam with the inspecting general. So I didn't even try to take that option. I just wanted away from him. I wanted out of that unit. And so I went through the chain of command, and I just was going to terminate my jump status to get away from him and get reassigned. That was my right. And my CO denied it. And the harassment got worse. And I finally called my mother. We prayed about it, or she prayed about it probably a lot more than me. And I decided to go AWOL. And for over 3 decades, I've tried my best just to bury it. And only about 3.5 years ago did I start trying to do something about it. I can tell this story now. I'm not ashamed anymore. And I've made a lot of progress, and I'm really excited about moving forward after meeting you guys as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing, because it takes a lot of effort and takes empowerment. You know, you've been pushed down for so long, and for me at least, it was embarrassment and feeling
Yes.
like you betrayed your group, or
Right.
you know, they
Right.
failed you. So that's that's what I felt, at least. And it sounds like you had a little similar. And it's great that you're finally, you know, being able to talk about it and being able to, you know, do something about it. And at least for me, it kept following me. It kept following me, and I finally did something about it. And
Right.
I won't talk about my journey, but it's great to hear a lot of people. It might take 10, 15, 20 years. Some people, it's been decades.
Right.
But I really appreciate you being here to be able to tell us about it.
It's been difficult, without a doubt. But I'm telling you, I've already connected with one person I know for a fact that went through almost the exact same thing. And by telling my story, he's seeking help as well. So that's my goal.
So how are you making progress right now? I mean, what are you doing
Well,
for the progress?
I'm very involved with Veterans Alternative. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the
Yep.
organization, but I started my journey because I just ran into Brian Anderson in the parking lot one day, a really bad day I was having, and he confronted me and asked me to come check out his organization. And I actually work there part-time. I when we're functioning normally, I do counseling. We do accelerated resolution therapy. ART is our bread and butter, but mostly it's the community that I've built in Veterans Alternative, and people that I can share my story with.
So you're telling me, or I'm hearing you say, is that you're starting to build that trust with the group of people again.
Right, and I can't begin to tell you how long it's been since I've been able to do that, and certainly have never been able to tell this story like that. I would have lied to you, told you, you know, I got, you know, honorable discharge and everything, and moved on.
Yeah. And are you working on that upgrade now?
I am. This whole situation we're in right now, of course, has slowed that down tremendously. I have been diagnosed by the VA mental health as post-traumatic stress related to this incident, and I have filed a complaint, or I filed my claim. It's been denied, and I am waiting, I think, to appear in person in St. Pete.
Okay. If you need any assistance, we do have a couple people in that area that I do know.
I want to talk to, I think Tony told me there's a couple of people that are almost identical to my situation. I would love to spend some time talking to them.
Yeah, one of our people is that I linked up with Heath.
Right.
Heath Phillips. He's been through the same thing you went through, as far as, you know, he went AWOL, all that,
Right.
the same kind of story, you know, AWOL, and he finally got his upgrade about a couple years ago. So hopefully you guys link together, and he can help you navigate this minefield.
Right.
I want to say I do appreciate, Kevin, you coming on, because, you know, for males in the military, it is an extra.
I
push.
thought I was like such a rarity, and now I know that I'm not. You know, for years I just thought I was not the norm.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate that. Now,
Thank you.
one of the things that we talked about, and of course, why we named the podcast, was about suicide. And I know, you know, I've already had a couple of conversations with Lakidra about the suicide and MST related. So can we guys talk about that? You know, and we'll start with you, Lakidra. I know you had a couple of suicides in your area. So can you tell us that relationship between the MST and the suicide? How do you?
It's kind of like the same thing. You know, that we all talked about, that embarrassment, and, you know, a lot of people feel like they can't say anything to anybody, certainly active duty. That's why I see a lot of my active duty friends and, you know, people that I mentor committing suicide, you know, because they just don't have anybody to talk to, and us being active duty, we have nobody to go to. So that's the biggest thing, is just, it happens a lot, and people don't understand. They find out later, after they committed suicide, that it was, you know, sexually assaulted or sexual related. But it's just, we have nowhere to go. So that's just our only hope. And it's just the embarrassment of, you know, certainly for males. I had a male that committed suicide about a week and a half ago. And his thing was, you know, because it was another male, what am I? Who am I? You know, I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. So I think this is important. Certainly males talking about it, just us in general. But yeah, it happens a lot, and it's happening more. I mean, we're 3 people in about 2 weeks now. We just had 2 a couple days ago. So it's just, we don't know where to go. This happens.
You know, I want to give a shout out to Brian Anderson again. I know Brian well from Veteran Alternatives. So good job, Brian, and what you're doing as well. It's important that we work together when it comes to veteran suicide and MST. So just want to give a shout out to Brian as well. Anybody else, any tribe got any questions for Kevin or the group?
I'll just jump in real quick. We got a lot of great comments coming in from Facebook. Thanks everybody for watching. You know, hello to my brothers and sisters out there. Thanks. Share on Facebook. Click that share link. There's somebody out there, somebody on your Facebook page. It's a veteran and needs to hear these messages. Needs to hear from Kevin. Needs to hear from Kadra and all of us. A lot of shout outs. We don't have any questions, but there's a lot of shout outs. A lot of people, Kevin, reaching out to you directly saying thanks so much for sharing your story. A lot of praise, high fives. Keep strong, brother. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Lynn, can you go over some, or even you, D'Amico, you guys, I mean, that's one of the things you do over in Jacksonville, some of the resources that are out there for someone may be suffering or want need help, whatever. You guys got any suggestions, recommendations?
Well, there's so many things out there. It's really about what that person needs. I mean, you could say, hey, go to see a counselor, but that might not be where they're at that moment of time. That's what I see a lot of when I hear Peer Connect, regardless if it's the women group or regardless if it's the nonprofit I run. They're not, most of them are not ready to even speak out to someone. It's one-on-one privacy, connecting with them, finding their problems, their immediate problems, and then their long-term problems, and sticking with them, developing that trust, developing that bond, connecting with other women or male veterans. And there is organizations out there. I know you were talking to Tony, the Cohen group is the new one that came out. If I said that right, Cohen Veterans Network. D'Amica, I know you know a lot of them. Operation Barnabas has actually helped us a lot. So I have to thank them guys. I know they've been watching too. So there's been a lot, but I know as far as the women piece of it, let alone I've had 4 women in the last 2 weeks in desire need, and I wish we had more. That's just easy way of saying it. But D'Amica, what other resources did you know in the Jacksonville area?
Well, you actually named quite a few that are really good, especially Cohen. They're really good. But I did want to put in a little plug because I did go to see a counselor through the military. I end up leaving after the first visit because she stated, oh, well, your post-traumatic stress disorder is from when you were a child and when you were molested as a child. I said, yes, however, we're talking about what occurred while I was overseas this year. And it was interesting because she kept reverting back to my childhood and said, oh, your PTSD has nothing to do with the military, it has to do from your childhood, and that's what we're putting in your record.
You know why, D'Amica? Because most of the time it's based off a claim process.
Exactly, and I knew that, but you know what? I didn't even care about claims or money. Yes, I cared about the healing process and just being able to talk it out. And that showed me right there, it gave me this bad taste in dealing with military again, because I'm like, you're supposed to be here for us, but yet you're more focused on, oh, the fact that I may try to make a claim later. Yeah. And so I went outside of the military to actually get help, and it did wonders. But what did for me, Kevin and Lakidra, was really becoming an advocate for others. That helped me with the healing process like no other, because I could understand and empathize with them and their struggles and their pain. And during the time I was a SARC, I had more men come forward because they knew that I was fighting in their corner than they have ever had in history. And I felt that was such an accomplishment because more men were understanding that, yes, it may have been a male who did it, and some were actually raped by women. And they felt so ashamed of that. And I was like, no, you're still the victim. And so many of them felt comfortable enough to tell their story. And I took great pride in that, and that really helped me with my healing process, because I was a voice that could advocate in those positions where they could not, just to get the justice that they needed, because the system is kind of still turned against us.
Yeah.
And so we still have to fight. Even to this day, I am astonished and can't believe what I'm hearing and seeing, when we should be so much further than that.
Yeah,
So thank you all.
I agree, Tamika. As many of you guys know my story, and I won't go into deep detail, but my story, I got out in 2004, and I've been fighting ever since. And finally, as of March of this year, I finally won 2 of my cases out of the 3. And for me to recover from MST, I made a goal set for myself, and it was something that I knew I could. It was more of a positive setting for me. It was the grief process of, okay, I've already mad at these people. I can't get them back. What can I do about it? What can I do to empower myself? And so I put 3 things in, and one was fighting my claims. The next was fighting who I was, and then become an advocate. And that's how I ended up where I'm at today as an advocate and a peer group. I was a counselor too, but it was just many different avenues that it was just seeing people, males and females, go through these process and get kicked in the butt, literally kicked in the butt, and not know what to do. And it's just questions, is how do I do this? Or how do I start this claim? And it's just, you can't. Well, let me rephrase this. I was a VSO also, but I couldn't fight my own claim. It was too emotional. And so I always recommend additional help, not just claims, but anything in life with the MST process. It's a difficult task. But reaching out was the first thing.
Yes, and I tell you that as a great, and one of the things you mentioned as well too, but you can chime in as well, Lakita. So what are the resources you can look for when you're on active duty? Once again.
Woo. Honestly,
Jamaica.
she'll probably have to help with this one, because honestly, I have not found anybody. I went to Military One Source. I've kind of like helped myself. There have been a few people on Military One Source that have been good. I found actually I had a call today. I found a company called Give an Hour. I guess it's a veteran company.
Yep.
I talked to them today, so they're going to help. But now Military One Source is saying, we're not dealing with MST. And I'm like, what? Like, this is, so I really don't know. So maybe you can help me with this one. And really quick, I will say this: Air Force, not trying to throw anybody in a bus, but I heard about the Wounded Warrior program because I heard stories. I've reached out to them and they shut the door in my face. So at this point, everybody talks a good game and they say they're here for you, and they're not there. So
Yeah, I know.
Well, for the Army, there's the Sexual Harassment and Assault Response Prevention Program. When I was the SARP, it used to be SAFER, but then we transitioned to SHARP. And when I was there, but even now, some of the stories I hear, they are still advocating. So they are a great resource to utilize. So for the Army, definitely look into the SHARP program and look into your local resources. Sometimes it's better to go outside of the network, the people who can be unbiased, who can just talk to you and don't know the military culture, and just can see you for that woman or that man that you are. So definitely look into your local resources.
This is a question I have, so maybe you guys can answer them, and Jean, you can chime in as well. Is there any kind of therapy that you thought that you either didn't like at all, or like that you thought was kind of effective when it comes when treating MST or PTSD? Anybody?
Oh, you don't want to know some of the therapy strategies I use.
Hey, I'll go last so I can just respond to what y'all throw at me.
Well, honestly, one that I did like, and I don't recommend this to anyone, I went to the gun range.
Mm.
So
I thought we were talking about,
I'm not going to hate on that one. That's actually a pretty good stress management coping strategy.
yeah, I didn't have to do it long. It helped get off some stress, and honestly, it helped. And I was like, oh, okay, I like this. And
So are you
it wasn't about,
are you hanging out with Elizabeth now?
yeah, I need to call her.
Oh, Lord.
But I think I don't know if I want to say productive. I've gone through many different things. I've gone through CBD. I've gone through oh my God, there's a whole bunch of stuff I've gone through, and it's not about and I think what happened is most of it was in the service in the VA system, and it was always against me or something, so it never was as productive. I did try biofeedback. It was a different kind of type of interesting. You just sit there and listen to music, and it's more of a. And I've tried tapping, EMDR, which you can kind of go off of it, Jean. But I'm still trying to find the right fit for me, I guess. I mean, we've done horseback riding. That's a little bit better than the counseling piece, but I did journaling, and I guess the biggest thing that's helped me has been advocating and fighting for others. I think that's what's been keeping me alive, to be honest with you.
So I'm the same way. I think vlogging and those things like that, and just reaching out to people, that helped. I also found like yoga, which I'm like not flexible, but I've done yoga and meditation and things like that. So it's kind of like, I'm like where you are, Lynn. I'm still trying to figure out what really works for me. But I just, even music, like, you know, things that I did as a child, I just try to find things that are soothing. Opera, like, I'm so weird. I love opera. I don't know why. But just things like that, just to, you know, soothe me. And that's kind of helped for me too. But mostly advocating for people, I think, just talking to those people who need help. Yeah.
And can I add one more thing? Honestly, my spiritual walk has been the most beneficial help for me. Because just like you said, there's that meditation time, there's that writing and journal time, that's just that alone time to process, and prayer, and all of that has really helped me tremendously, realizing what my worth is, and that I'm valuable, and that incident did not make me who I am, but I'm stronger than that, and I'm a survivor for overcoming it, and how strong I really am because I have a voice to speak up for other people. So my spirituality has been a major lifesaver for me.
Besides your busyness.
That too.
Amen. Jean, you have any other couple you're going to add? I know that EMDR.
Well, let me jump on why maybe going to the range works, because you have to concentrate, you have to slow your brain down, and you have to focus. So that's actually a really good rhythm. It's a rhythm and a pattern, right? All of us, we know how to shoot. Some of us know how to shoot well, right? We pull the trigger on the exhale. So you're controlling your breathing, things like that. Golf is another great one, because you have no choice but to calm down and focus, right? So these are all really good coping skills, actually. I'm personally certified in EMDR. It's one that I liked, and it worked for me. But part of the connection is you have to connect with the therapist too. So, you know, like you pointed out, there's that part of it as well. So you have to connect with the therapist. It is okay to fire your therapist. We do not take it personally. And if they do, they need a new career. It's okay to say, you know what, you're not working for me. And we love, if you're comfortable enough to tell me that, I'm so happy. I'm so happy to help you find somebody that does work for you. For all I know, I trigger you and remind you of your mother or the person who assaulted you. I can't help that. I can't change that. I can't fix that. And I'm sorry for it. So I want to help you get the help you need. Some people, I'm looking at some of the comments we have here on Facebook, they're saying things like maybe find a civilian therapist. Sometimes people find it's difficult to talk to an officer, or sometimes people find that they have their own validation, you know, uncomfortabilities, and they just don't want to talk to somebody who, you know, has walked in their boots, and that's perfectly okay. That's no different than I'd rather a female therapist, or I'd rather a male therapist, or I'd rather a non-binary therapist. They're all out there. So find what connects for you. And part of the journey is if you go through a couple therapists, you learn something every time, and that's okay. It's all part of the journey.
That's great to hear. We're coming up on 20 minutes after. So what I want to do is give all the panelists the time, a chance to sit there and have, alibi that you may have that you think it would be important that the audience may know that you can add. So we'll start up with D'Amica. Anything you think you want to add to what you was talking about before we close up?
Well, I know it could seem cliche, but we are here. We're fighting for you. We're going to fight with you. Believe me, you do not have to go through this on your own. There's a lot of people out here with a voice, with the strength that will fight with you. So please reach out to someone. Don't sit in isolation. Don't sit and think you're the victim, because you're not. You're a survivor because you have survived this. As long as you have breath in your body, you have survived this. So please reach out to someone if there's ever a moment that you feel by yourself.
Mhm.
All of these people here on this panel, people throughout the country, throughout the world, they are ready to fight with you hand in hand. So please reach out.
Thanks. Lakidra?
I feel the same way she does. You have to have that survivor mentality. Like you've made it. Like you've made it. It's a day by day process. It's hard, but be consistent and just never lose hope. So just keep on fighting and understand we all are here for you. We understand what you're going through. I'm fresh to this, so it's still kind of tender to me at times, but understand I'm still advocating and I'm here. I got everybody's back. So we're going to do this. We're going to get through it.
And Kevin?
I got to say community. Veterans Alternative has been huge for me as far as community goes. But not everybody has that availability, but I'm telling you, there are organizations out there, there are people out there that believe the same way I do, and strong community bonds, whether it be through your church, through your neighbors, whatever it takes. I have spent so much of my life socially isolated because of this, and that kills you. In the end, that is what I believe brings it to the end. So, I think I'm very grateful for Veterans Alternative and organizations like them.
Thanks, Kev.
Yep.
So Jane, you say we have some questions in the comments that you may want to.
Again, yep, a couple more questions and comments going on. Great validation for everybody. Thanks so much. Thanks for what you do. I actually have a great question here. And of course it scrolled on me. I apologize. It was one individual identifying themselves as an LMHC, licensed mental health counselor, and was asking how they themselves could utilize themselves as a professional with their license. How can they better help connect within their community? So I guess let me put that question on to you. As somebody who would be looking for a therapist like myself and these other individuals, and if you're looking specifically for a counselor who is also a veteran, what's a great way for them to advertise themselves so you can find us easily?
Well, there's the one that everybody knows. You go to something like Psychology Today, or get involved in the veteran community. But if you really want to be part of something bigger, I got to say Veterans Counseling Veterans. That's the whole point of Veterans Counseling Veterans, because it's the community of us, and not just the veterans, but also spouses of veterans. They have that walk that spouses understand, especially with children and stuff. So clearly, and then spread the word. So if you're a veteran or a spouse of a veteran, Veterans Counseling Veterans, you can go to email I just sent out and then introduce yourselves, or and then share it. Let anybody know about that. So the more there are of us, the more.
Where are they located, Tony?
I don't know. I'm not looking at the screen, but we're gonna ask that. I don't know where he's located.
Well, I guess so the answer to that would be, if you're a professional in any right, or you're just a great bullshit artist, I mean, if you're listen, if you feel that you can help your brothers and sisters, that's what we're here for, and that's what Tony created this podcast and Veterans Counseling Veterans for, to get the professionals together so that it's an easier way for us to work with each other, network with each other, and be there for each other. So if you feel that if you're an equine specialist, if you're a yoga specialist, if you're an underwater basket weaving specialist, and you think that you've got something that will help your brothers and sisters, we want to talk to you. There's the
Mhm.
website, Veterans Counseling Veterans, Inc. The Facebook sites, you can reach Tony. I shouldn't say we. This is Tony's baby, right? But I mean, you can reach out to Veterans Counseling Veterans, and they
Yeah.
will respond.
I don't mind having more. I don't mind having more parents though. So the more the merrier. So before we leave, and I really want to first of all I want to thank the panelists who are all here, being courageous and sharing their journey and stuff. But I do want to just one thing. Lakidra Houston has agreed to be part of our tribe, and so what does that mean? That means Lakidra will be also offering some of the advice and some of the things you see in the active duty world. And we really welcome that kind of role as far as the expertise, and we welcome Lakidra. So what's going to happen? We're going to now bid our panelists goodbye, but Lakidra will stay because now she has been knighted as being one of the tribe, and we'll have a conversation about what we've learned in the last segment. So thank you very much, everybody, for being on on our podcast. And now let's talk with the tribe. So, everybody, what did you guys learn, or what was your takeaway from what we learned so far?
That there's a lot of people out there that are very.
Lynn, where are you?
Can you say something? Okay.
Oh, Lynn. Okay, Lynn was talking. Okay, there you go. There you go, Lynn. Sorry.
What's up with that? You like my answer?
Yeah, it was like you bounced out, but we brought you back in. So sorry about that. Technology.
What was I saying now?
We were talking about what we learned, what we found useful, and what.
Yeah, we all, a lot of us have similar story. Well, before I was going to mention something about I think what I've seen with most people is if you can tell your story or start to tell your story to someone, even if it's just one person, you see that recovery start. And it's funny because I worked with a person for over a year, and literally that person, I'm not good enough, or lack of confidence, or literally would not file a claim. I mean, she had nothing. And this is in Jacksonville, and I'm still working with her to this day. She'll come back every 2-3 weeks. She'll talk to me, but it's one of those things, oh, I'm not good enough, or something happens to her, and then she comes back. And so I've been working with her for a while, and I think it's been my longest case, but she's struggling. She's struggling. She needs to get inpatient, but we are also seeing a lot of issues if somebody say, hey, I need to be inpatient, and they're not being taken. That's another problem we're facing. I have 2 people, one actually from the California area, and she wanted to go to Arizona, and then one in Florida that they say Bay Pines, but then it's not, I don't know how you describe it. And people are looking outside the system. We're having problems with finding inpatient for help. So, sorry, I'll stop there.
No problem. Jean, you have a takeaway from our conversation with the panelists?
Yeah, the part that Kev shared with the alternative veterans, I pulled that up and I shared it to the Facebook link, but I've still got it open. I've never heard of it. And so thank you so much for sharing that. I'm looking at it now. I'm definitely going to scour through this website. I think that's something I learned there, and I think very necessary. So
is it the articles, the 2 articles?
The website for the veteransalternative.org.
Yes, I played for there a couple years back when I was in Wisconsin, and I never went through with it, but yeah, I hear a lot of good things about them.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to, and we mentioned a couple of times about the Call-In Veteran Network, and we have a Call-In Veteran Network here in Tampa. We got one in Jacksonville, and we're going to have them on pretty soon when we do our spotlight of nonprofits that provide support for veterans and their families. So they'll be one of our spotlight guests coming up in a couple of weeks. So anything else to say? Our new tribe member, Lakidra?
Welcome.
Well, hey, I'm excited.
What do they say? Welcome to the show.
It's just, I've never noticed how many people were bold enough to tell their story. I've always seen people do it behind closed doors, so it's good to see it. It also, the first one I did, I was like emotional, but I think the more I've talked about it, I found more like it heals me. If it's like I feel refreshed. But a lot of things, I'm noticing is that we have all these resources we know nothing about. A lot of us have the same story. So I think the biggest thing is to make sure, we provide the resources for everybody, and also make sure, people understand, they should be comfortable. They may, everybody's not comfortable, but it's okay to tell your story. It's okay to seek help. But I'm kind of noticing the same trends. Why are we active duty? I'm seeing a lot of people struggling active duty. And now when they become veterans, they're getting out, and it's a little easier than it is active duty. So now I'm kind of thinking, like, what can we do? When people are having these issues, when survivors or victims going through this, what can we do when they're active duty as soon as it happens, as soon as they come forth? Why are we failing?
Well, one thing I have encountered, let me rephrase it this way. I'm going to go off of my experience because it's easier, because I don't want to tell everybody's story because I don't know everybody's. What I've encountered besides mine was homelessness when I got out. But I think what I see in a lot of individuals that I work with, from the transition active to getting out, is, first of all, when you're active duty, you've got childcare paid for, you've got housing paid for, and you've got a lot of financial pieces paid for. Well, when you get out, you get a lump sum or you get disability pay or whatever pay you get out if you get, if you're a disability or anything. And then trying to adjust the childcare alone is anywhere from $200 to $400 every 2 weeks, depending on if you have a young child. That's expensive. Then you're paying, the rate around here is $1,000 maybe for 1 bedroom, all the way up to $2,500. And you're going on, when you're in base or wherever you're active duty, you get BAH. So I think that is one piece of it, trying to keep like the adjustment of the reality of the financial piece, because that's what I see a lot of, like, oh, I didn't know what to look for. Mine was a little different situation because I became homeless for a different reason. But in the general idea, the other piece of it is that I think I see a lot of the MST and their survivors, or not at the time they're survivors, but they come out, they feel so alone. And so they don't want to reach out, or they don't want nothing to do with the military for a year or two or even decade. And then they get to the point where now I have to reach out. I'm in dire need. I'm going to become homeless. And that's when you start seeing a lot of our veterans start to reach out, or to the point of maybe when they come out, they either have a mentor or they have someone that takes them on, that, okay, this is what you need, or these are the resources you need, and maybe walks them through it. So that's what I have seen or encountered through my experience and the people I work with.
So can you provide resources? Like, do you have resources you can provide, when people are homeless and things like that before they get to that point? Because I think that's something that I see that a lot as well.
Depends on the location. It really depends on the location. We just recently, this is a great example, and I won't name names out in this community in Florida, but we just had a luck in the Tampa area where they provided 36 rooms for homeless veterans for 30 days to get them off the streets. So that was just the luck of the draw. But there's options, but unfortunately there is issues with homeless with women and children. There's lack of it. So, but we try to find. Operation Barnabas has helped us a lot with that too.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Tribe, for closing us out. And you had great insightful information and questions. And I want to thank everybody out there who listen to our podcast. If you want to see what we're doing for the next couple of podcasts, go on our Veterans Council Veteran Inc. page and like it, and then share it. And we can get more people out there involved in what we're doing, because Veterans Council Veterans feel like it's important, especially military sexual trauma. It's got to still be talked about, and we got to and let people know there's help out there, and then if they need advocacy. So definitely this is something that we're not going to stop. We're going to continue to do this, and I really appreciate everybody who's in here. So one thing I do want to mention before we go off is that on the 25th of May, we're going to have our own special memorial for families who lost veterans suicide, family and veterans of suicide. So if you want to view this, we're going to have 2 ways to do it. In either our Zoom, we'll put out the Zoom information as far as the link in there, or through our Facebook Live. And it's going to be a virtual memorial. So we'll have a couple of pastors that will be talking. We have some national anthem and taps and stuff. So it'll be just like a memorial, but it'll be virtual. So I hope to see you guys there. I want to again thanks our tribe again. Thank you to our new member, Lakidra, And I see you guys next week at the same time. Thank you. Tony Williams out from Veterans Council of Veterans. Wow. Okay. So somebody said the screen froze.
Get out of here. Rush.
Can't say anything now.
Somebody said the screen froze on the other end.
Well, maybe because you transferred me over.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know. It just completely died for me.
We were trying. What it is that, and it's really hard. That's why it's when you're trying to click everybody to put them in the waiting room. If you're not real careful, you can put someone else out and not know you put
I
them
just
out.
didn't want to be in the waiting room.
Click. So I got to figure something out about that because that's the biggest thing is making sure that people who are here stay here. So okay, let me close this thing here. So how you guys think it went?